Yo, I decided to change up the scenery a little bit. You're also getting me post-workout, so you just have to deal with it. Got a cup of decaf coffee right here. It's hot. It'll need to cool down just a little bit. So if you don't know, we are currently reading this book, All About Love by Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks, like I've said in other videos, is one of my all-time favorite authors, if not my favorite author. And we are going to do chapter 3, Honesty, Be True to Love. If you're interested in this book and you have suggestions, the easiest way to make those is to go to Patreon. You can find the link in my bio and join our Discord group. It's kind of a support group community. We go through books, we watch movies together, we hang out, and basically just offer encouragement and support as all of us are on different levels. And levels sounds kind of weird. It means like some are better than others. We're in different places in our own journeys of healing and trying to understand and recover our authentic selves. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you like this book, if you like to hang out with me, that's like the way to do it. Otherwise, you can find me on other socials, Instagram and TikTok. I'm most active on TikTok until the government decides to shut it down. You can find me there at Dope Dad or Not Actually Leonidas. They'll both get you to me. And I'll see you over there if you want some more of this guy. Until then, we're going to read through this book. Been reading through it. This is the 4th video in the series. And every now and then I stop and kind of just go on little rabbit trail tangents on whatever it makes me think about. Yeah, so with no further ado, I hope you get something out of this. If you do, let me know. And even if you just get a good night's sleep, let me know that too. Chapter 3, Honesty, Be True to Love. When we reveal ourselves to our partner and find that this brings healing rather than harm, we make an important discovery. The intimate relationship can provide a sanctuary from the world of facades. I'm off to a good start. Facades. Facades, tomato, tomato. A sacred space where we can be ourselves as we are. This kind of unmasking, speaking our truth, sharing our inner struggles, and revealing our raw edges is sacred activity, which allows two souls to meet and touch more deeply. John Wellwood. It just so happens at the time of this recording to be Valentine's Day. This is the first Valentine's Day with my partner, whose name is also Sam. Have I mentioned in these videos my name is Sam? You know that if you came from TikTok, but you may not know that if you just found me here. So Sam and Sam, coming up on a year of being in love, but this is definitely our first Valentine. So Sam, if you see this, I love you very, very deeply. That opening paragraph, well, yeah, that feels kind of like what we got going on. It is no accident that when we first learn about justice and fair play as children, it is usually in a context where the issue is one of telling the truth. The heart of justice is truth telling, seeing ourselves and the world the way it is rather than the way we want it to be. In recent years, sociologists and psychologists have documented the fact that we live in a nation where people are lying more and more each day. Philosopher Cicely Bach's book, Lying, Moral Choice in Public and Private Life, was among the first works to call attention to the grave extent to which lying has become accepted and commonplace in our daily interactions. M. Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled, includes an entire section on lying. In The Dance of Deception, Harriet Lerner, another widely read psychotherapist, calls attention to the way in which women are encouraged by sexist socialization to pretend and manipulate, to lie as a way to please. Lerner outlines the various ways in which constant pretense and lying alienate women from their true feelings, how it leads to depression and lots of self-awareness, and a loss of self-awareness. Lies are told about the most insignificant aspects of daily life. Have you ever guys, one of the things I've learned in the year plus that I've been posting stuff on TikTok and building this community and just sharing people what I'm learning, how I've been healing since my divorce. One of those things is that I'm autistic. And one of the things that happens when you're autistic is you pick up on people's patterns, but if you don't know you're autistic, you don't really have a reason for it. You're just kind of like, doesn't everybody do this? And when you start learning that everybody doesn't do that, like it really messes with your head. And one of the things that people use a lot that don't make sense to me is subtext. And that to me is like those insignificant things that people like embellish a little bit. And then you find out they embellished and you're like, but why though? I thought you were like, did you think that little thing was going to mean so much to me that I would not accept you anymore, that I would completely reject you? It's like really insignificant shit. Coffee time. If you're having a drink, let me know in the comments. When many of us are asked basic questions like, how are you today? That's a super autistic thing, okay? Small talk, chit chat? No, like if somebody goes, hey Sam, how's it going? They're gonna get an update. They're gonna get a story. They're gonna get, this is what my weeks look like. And it took me a long time to find out that people were just hoping for the answer, fine. Oh, I'm doing good. Nah, nope, not for me. A lie is substituted for the truth. Much of lying people do in everyday life is either done to avoid conflict or spare someone's feelings. Hence, if you are asked to come to dinner with someone whom you do not particularly like, you do not tell the truth or simply decline, you make up a story. You tell, okay, that makes sense. Okay. A thing that, I've stopped a bunch already, just in this paragraph. A thing that often struck me as odd is when people don't, because autistic people communicate in a framework of information. If you ask us a question, most likely you're just gonna get the data file of whatever it is about the thing you asked about. So for me, it always struck me as odd when people didn't believe my story, right? When people didn't believe what I was telling them. And they'd be like, I don't think you're being honest. And I'm not saying that autistic people can't lie, they absolutely can. But for me, it was like, if someone's like, hey man, what happened at work today? It's like, and I'm literally just replaying what happened at work today. Well, what else happened? And I would be so confused. Like, did I forget a detail, whatever? But it makes sense if neurotypical people, autistic people, if you don't know, are under this broader umbrella of neurodivergence. But neurotypical people know that people are making up stories. And so when I tell my story, they're like, is that true? When I'm literally just telling them, man, that makes so much sense. Another thing I've been learning a lot about is the difference between neurotypical and neurodivergent communication. If you'd like me to make a long video of that, let me know. I've made a bunch of TikToks about it a couple months ago, but we can go about it in depth. Let me know in the doobly-doo. You tell a lie. In such a situation, it should be appropriate to simply decline if stating one's reason for declining might unnecessarily hurt someone. Lots of people learn how to lie in childhood. Usually they begin to lie to avoid punishment or to avoid disappointing or hurting an adult. How many of us can vividly recall childhood moments where we courageously practiced the honesty we had been taught to value by our parents, only to find that they did not really mean for us to tell the truth all the time? So I grew up evangelical Pentecostal Christian, and in the Christian sect that I grew up in, like alcohol was a no-no, right? And so I remember hearing from my parents growing up like, oh, alcohol is bad, da, 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 da. And so one of the lies that my parents told me, like I found out probably high school that they drank, right? And I'm like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden, once I found that out, it became like all these memories from when I was really little, like that thing you had, that wasn't a root beer, that was a beer, like these little lies. And instead of explaining it to us or teaching us themselves, like my parents were put in this place where, what do? We believe this, we're raising our kids this way because we think that's what's best for them. And do we affirm the teaching of the church even though we don't practice it and look like hypocrites? Or do, you know what I mean? Or do we sit down and have just a nuanced conversation? They chose to lie about it. So that was we're talking about lies, whatever, from our parents. What was the first lie you remember your parents telling you? Tell me down below. That's so funny. It's annoying. It's funny in like absurd way, not funny because it is not cool to do that to children, right? How many of us can vividly recall childhood moments where we courageously practiced the honesty we had been taught to value by our parents, only to find that they did not really mean for us to tell the truth all the time? In far too many cases, children are punished in circumstances where they respond with honesty to a question posed by an adult authority figure. It is impressed on their conscience early on then that telling the truth will cause pain. And so they learn that lying is a way to avoid being hurt and hurting others. We're going to sip that coffee, and we're going to take this pen, and we're going to highlight that part. In far too many cases, children are punished in circumstances where they respond with honesty to a question posed by an adult authority figure. It is impressed on their conscience early on then that telling the truth will cause pain. And so they learn that lying is a way to avoid being hurt and hurting others. Lots of children are confused by the insistence that they simultaneously be honest and yet also learn how to practice convenient duplicity. As they mature, they begin to see how often grown-ups lie. They begin to see that few people around them tell the truth. I was raised in a world where children were taught to tell the truth, but it did not take long for us to figure out that adults did not practice what they preached. Among my siblings, those who learned how to tell polite lies or say what grown-ups wanted to hear were always more popular and more rewarded than those of us who told the truth. That was another autistic thing. I couldn't figure out the subtext of the rules, right? Like, so the people that did figure out, those who learned how to tell polite lies or say the things that grown-up wanted to hear were always more popular and more rewarded than those of us who told the truth. I couldn't figure those things out because I was autistic. Because it's hard to read social cues. Among any group of kids, it is never clear why some quickly learn the fine art of dissimulation. That is, taking on whatever appearance is needed to manipulate a situation, while others find it hard to mask true feeling. Since pretense is such an expected aspect of childhood play, it is a perfect context for mastering the art of dissimulation. Concealing the truth is often a fun part of childhood play, yet when it becomes a common practice, it is a dangerous prelude to lying all the time. Sometimes children are fascinated by lying because they see the power it gives them over adults. Imagine a little girl goes to school and tells her teacher she is adopted, knowing all the while that is not true. She revels in the attention received, both the sympathy and the understanding offered, as well as the frustration and anger of her parents when the teacher calls to talk about this newly discovered information. A friend of mine, who lies a lot, tells me that she loves fooling people and making them act on knowledge that only she knows is untrue. She is 10 years old. That's funny. I was like sitting here reading, like, why is she friends with this person? And then she reveals it's a kid. When I was her age, I was frightened by lies. They confused me and they created confusion. Other kids poked fun at me because I was not good at lying. In the only truly violent episode between my mother and father, he accused her of lying to him. When there was the night an older sister lied and said she was babysitting when she was actually out on a date, as he hit her, our father kept yelling, "Don't you lie to me." While the violence of his response created in us terror of the consequences of lying, it did not alter the reality that we knew he did not always tell the truth. His favorite way of lying was withholding. His motto was, just remain silent when asked questions, then you will not get caught in a lie. I like that she brings that up because, like, have you ever ran into people? One of my kids does this. They'll be like, well, I didn't technically say. And so we've had a lot of talks around that, around like you're using like semantics, to jump around, to skip around, to avoid accountability, and that's not okay. A thing happened, saw the thing happen, or your sister was upset, or your brother was upset, or whatever. And so I love that Bella's bringing forward that, like, being withholding, not saying anything, can still be a way to lie or conceal truth, right? The men I have loved always lied to avoid confrontation or take responsibility for inappropriate behavior. And Dorothy, I wonder why men, I mean, everybody can do that, right? So one of the things I do, if you're coming to me through these videos and not through TikTok, is I talk about, because it's one of the things I've had to learn a lot in therapy, is how the particular way that we socialize young boys in this country. Yes, I have my own unique traumas, my own unique stories from my own upbringing that may be kind of close to yours or totally different, and those things play into it. But I was also raised as a young boy, and there's certain ways that we raise young boys that grows up into particular kind of types of men, and some are if this is the first video you've seen of mine, I'm from Alabama originally. I live in the Midwest now, so every now and then that drawl comes out. But what we do to boys as we raise them produces a particular type of man. And so if you've heard the phrase toxic masculinity, I know that's a trigger for some people, but I want you to think of it as a perspective, like spectrum. There we go, got that word out. And over here is like the absolute worst dude you can think of. And then over here is someone who has somehow been able to avoid the traps of that socialization, of the way we raise young boys, and is just like purely authentically them, right? And most of us are not over here, even though we like to think we're here. You know, we're somewhere in the middle. And so what I try to help guys do when I talk to them, when I coach them, is kind of figure out where they're at and help them unpack to get closer to this authentic version of themselves, further away from the part of the form of masculine that culture wants them to be, and instead be the type of masculine that they want to be, right? It's a much better way to live, because society doesn't care about you. They want men to be careless and heartless and soulless, because they need you to work to drive the economy, to be ready to go to war, and they put like a sense of duty on you. And for sure, like, protect your people, love your people. I'm willing to die for all the children in this house, no doubt. If there's some choice to be made, me or them, me, take me. However, when we socialize young boys that, like, they are essentially, that their whole existence is meant in service completely of others, and we make this honorable spin on it, which I think is partly true, but then it gets used for your employer, right? Who doesn't give a shit about you. And then so what happens is we see higher rates of suicide in men, we see higher rates of job dissatisfaction, and what's sad about those men is that they're fulfilling the script that they were raised to fulfill, that they were told that's what would make them fulfilled, that's what would make them a man. And it's not true. And so my encouragement to men is, what if you can be free from that? What if you can reclaim yourself? Yeah, you probably still have to have a job, right? You still have responsibilities. We can talk about those things. But what do you want? What does it look like for you to live your life, to step into it and take up space in it? You know what I mean? If you're interested in that, I do coaching, and you can get a hold of me through the Patreon. The men I have loved always lied to avoid confrontation or take responsibility for inappropriate behavior. In Dorothy Dinnerstein's groundbreaking book, The Mermaid and the Minotaur, Sexual Arrangements and Human Malaise, she shares the insight that when a little boy learns that his powerful mother, who controls his life, really has no power within a patriarchy, it confuses him and causes rage. Lying becomes one of the strategic ways he can act out and render his mother powerless. Lying enables him to manipulate the mother even as he exposes her lack of power. This makes him feel more powerful. Males learn to lie as a way of obtaining power. And females not only do the same, but they also lie to pretend powerlessness. One of the things that Bell Hooks does, and if you've read this book is either tied or close second, but her favorite book of mine is The Will to Change. And if you read The Will to Change, which I encourage you to do, maybe I'll reread it again and then post some videos. Bell takes everybody to task, right? She's not the type to be like, and men and these women, she's like, dudes, like men do this and women do this and this happens like this and da-da-da-da-da, and it happens because of these reasons. So anyway, in her work, Harriet Lerner talks about the way in which patriarchy upholds deception, encouraging women to present a false self to men and vice versa. In Dory Hollander's 101 Lies Men Tell Women, she confirms that while both women and men lie, her data and the findings of other researchers indicate that men tend to lie more and with more devastating consequences. I'm going to underline both of these books because they sound super interesting to me. Where's the other one? Here it is. So I'll read it again. That's The Mermaid and the Minotaur, Sexual Arrangements and Human Malaise by Dorothy Dinnerstein. And then Dory Hollander's 101 Lies Men Tell Women, if you're interested and you don't want to just rewind backwards a little bit. For many, maybe we'll do them in book club. If you want to join the book club, you know where to go. For many young males, the earliest experience of power over others comes from the thrill of lying to more powerful adults and getting away with it. Lots of men share with me that it was difficult. I'll highlight all this. Lots of men shared with me that it was difficult for them to tell the truth if they saw that it would hurt a loved one. Significantly, the lying many boys learn to do to avoid hurting mom, or whoever becomes so habitual that it becomes hard for them to distinguish a lie from the truth. This behavior carries over into adulthood. That makes so much damn sense, right? Okay. Significantly, the lying many boys learn to do to avoid hurting mom, probably mom, or whomever becomes so habitual that it becomes hard for them to distinguish. And then people in adult romantic relationships with these dudes are like, why can't they be vulnerable? Why can't they tell the truth? Why? Because when they were little boys, they learned to lie because they didn't want to hurt their moms. They didn't want to upset dad. That's sad, y'all. It makes me think of what I always tell my kids is hey, we learn these things so that you can tell when they're happening to you, and you can also tell when you're doing them to others. So I just feel a sadness for people that are struggling in their adult relationships because they really want connection, but they're repeating the patterns that they learned as children to lie, to cover up, to say that they're fine, to not share what they're really feeling or what they're really thinking, because the whole time they're trying to figure out how to please this other person, because that's what they have to do. That's how they keep control. That's how they keep power over their environment. And I think that kind of shifts the narrative a little bit, because sometimes people paint it as and for sure there are men who are absolutely abusive, absolutely domineering, absolutely. And what I would say is it's the same conditioning. Remember how I talked earlier about that spectrum? Those are the dudes who are I have to control, right? And those are the worst of the worst dudes. There's another book I read called Why Does He Do That? It's about those dudes, the worst of the worst dudes. But then there's the dude who does this, who's a people pleaser, who is trying to maintain a performance, trying to put a facade out there that he's got it together, that he's okay, that he can take it. And he's making all these subtle lies all the time. That was my dad. We'll save that for, oh my gosh, guys. Okay. Another thing that happens we'll save that for a different story time. Another thing that happens when you're autistic is that you, like all of the information and then the pattern matching, and you pattern match all the information. And so this little truth here, that makes so much sense in my dad. That makes so much sense. Let's continue. Often men who would never think of lying in the workplace lie constantly in intimate relationships. This seems to be especially the case for heterosexual men who see women as gullible. Many men confess that they lie because they can get away with it. Their lies are forgiven. To understand why male lying is more accepted in our lives, we have to understand the way in which power and privilege are accorded to men simply because they are males within a patriarchal culture. Underline. The very concept of being a man. I love when I think Belle's about to say what I was trying to explain, and she's way smarter than me. But I love it when I go on a tangent. I'm like, boop, 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 boop. And then I start reading and she starts saying what I was thinking. The very concept of being a man, a real man, has always implied that when necessary, men can take action that breaks the rules that is above the law. Patriarchy tells us daily through the movies, television, and magazines that men of power can do whatever they want, that it's the freedom that makes them men. This message has given males is that to be honest is to be soft. The ability to be dishonest and indifferent to the consequences makes a male hard, separates men from the boys. Makes so much sense, dude. Makes so much sense. Read Bell Hooks, y'all. Or listen to me read it. That's fine. Join us in the book club at the thing. John Stoltenberg's book, The End of Manhood, a book for men of conscience, analyzes the extent... Well, that's another book I should read. Jeez. So many book recommendations in here, Bell. Analyzes the extent to which the masculine identity offered men as the ideal in patriarchal culture is one that requires all males to invent and invest in a false self. That's what I was saying. From the moment little boys are taught they should not cry or express hurt, feelings of loneliness or pain, that they must be tough, they are learning how to mask true feeling. In worst case scenarios, they are learning how to not feel anything ever. These lessons are usually taught to males by other males and sexist mothers. Even boys raised in the most progressive, loving households where parents encourage them to express emotions, learn a different understanding about masculinity and feelings on the playground. Oh, sorry, I read that silly. Even boys raised in the most progressive, loving households, where parents encourage them to express emotions, learn a different understanding about masculinity and feelings on the playground, in the classroom, playing sports, or watching television. They may end up choosing patriarchal masculinity to be accepted by the other boys and to be affirmed by male authority figures. In his important work, Rediscovering Masculinity, Victor Seidler stresses, when we learn to use language as boys, we very quickly learn how to conceal ourselves through language. We learn to master language so that we can control the world around us. Dude, I see this all the time in my comments on TikToks. It's like dudes in particular get really hung up on words, right? So if you're talking about, here's an example. If you're talking about stoicism, right? And then you're trying to explain the nuance of it or how to practice it or what it looks like lived out and the philosophy behind it, and a dude disagrees with you, they will be like, well, according to the dictionary, and they get really stuck on a dictionary definition as if that couple sentence definition can explain the whole of what a concept is. And I got in an argument with a dude in comments about this one time. And the dictionary even has an asterisk underneath a lot of these things. It's The dictionary this is to help, like, it's a starter at best, right? It is not meant to be used in arguments and debates. And that will happen all the time in my comments. A dude will come in to try to control the conversation, and he'll be like, have you even read the dictionary definition of racism, of patriarchy? Have you? And it's like, and that's all they're doing. They're trying to control, they're trying to master it, to craft it, because they have to uphold their perception of themselves in my comments. I don't even fucking know who they are. I don't even care. Like, if they're a dude who's willing to learn and is asking your questions, I care a lot about that dude. Belle's so good, y'all. Even though we learn to blame others for our unhappiness and misery in relationships, we also know that at some unspoken level how our masculinity has been limited and injured as we touch the hurt and pain of realizing how little we seem to feel about anything. Okay, underline all this. We learn to master language so that we control the world around us. Even though we learn to blame others for our unhappiness and misery in relationships, we also know that at some unspoken level, how our masculinity has been limited and injured as we touch the hurt and pain of realizing how little we seem to feel about anything. Estrangement from feelings makes it easier for men to lie because they are often in a trance state, utilizing survival strategies of asserting manhood that they learned as boys. This inability to connect with others carries with it an inability to assume responsibility for causing pain. This denial is most evident in cases where men seek to justify extreme violence to those less powerful, usually women, by suggesting they are the ones who were actually victimized. I see that all the time in my comments. Regardless of the intensity of the male masquerade, inwardly, many men see themselves as victims of lovelessness. I do think Belle is absolutely correct there. I do think that is the root, which is why I have compassion. Like, I have compassion for just people in general, right? When I read these things, like, I can go, ooh, but then I don't have compassion for behaviors, right? I don't have compassion for men who are violent, who are abusers. I don't have compassion for men who can't take responsibility, who do these same things that happen in the book. And so I just go, you're doing the thing. And until you stop doing the thing, I'm not giving you my time. I thought you're here trying to help men. Men that are willing. Men that see this and they want to change it. Men that reflect. Men that want to connect back to the emotions that they were told that they weren't supposed to have. You know? So if you're that dude and you want to hang out, go to the thing. Regardless of the intensity of the male masquerade inwardly, many men see themselves as the victims of lovelessness. Like everyone, they learned as children to believe that love would be present in their lives. Although so many boys are taught to behave as though love does not matter, in their hearts they yearn for it. That yearning does not go away simply because they become men. Lying, as one form of acting out, is a way that they articulate ongoing rage at the failure of love's promise. To embrace patriarchy, they must actively surrender the longing to love. Boom. Patriarchal masculinity requires boys and men not only that they see themselves as more powerful and superior to women, but that they do whatever it takes to maintain their controlling position. This is one of the reasons, I'm going to end up highlighting this whole damn chapter. This is one of the reasons men, more so than women, use lying as a means of gaining power in relationships. A commonly accepted assumption in patriarchal culture is that love can be present in a situation where one group or individual dominates another. Many people believe men can dominate women and children and still be loving. Psychoanalyst Carl Jung insightfully emphasized the truism that where the will to power is paramount, love will be lacking. Talk to any group of women about their relationships with men, no matter their race or class, and you will hear stories about the will to power, about the way men use lying, and that includes withholding information as a way to control and subordinate. financial information, personal information, where they were with their buddies, how late they're going to be out. It is no accident the greater cultural aspect of lying in society coincided with women gaining greater social equity. Early on in the feminist movement, women insisted that men had the upper hand because they usually controlled the finances. Now that women's earning power was greatly increased, though it is not on par with men's, and women are more economically independent, men who want to maintain dominance must deploy subtler strategies to colonize and disempower them. Even the wealthiest professional women can't be brought down by can be brought down by being in a relationship where she longs to be loved and is consistently lied to. To the degree that she trusts her male companion, lying and other forms of betrayal will most likely shatter her self-confidence and her self-esteem. I'm going to run out of ink in this pen. Allegiance to male domination requires of men who embrace this thinking, and many, if not most do, that they maintain dominance over women by any means necessary. While much cultural attention is given to domestic violence and practically everyone agrees it is wrong for men to hit women as a way of subordinating us, most men use psychological terrorism as a way to subordinate women. This is a socially acceptable form of coercion, and lying is one of the most powerful weapons in this arsenal. When men lie to women, presenting a false self, the terrible price they pay to maintain power over us is the loss of their capacity to give and receive love. Trust is the foundation of intimacy. When lies erode trust, genuine connection cannot take place. While men who dominate others can do experience ongoing care, they place a barrier between themselves and the experience of love. All visionary male thinkers challenge male domination and insist that men can return to love only by repudiating the will to dominate. I agree. I'm a visionary male thinker. In The End of Manhood, Stoltenberg continually emphasizes that men can honor their own selfhood only through loving justice. He asserts, justice between people is perhaps the most important connection people can have. I like that. Loving justice for themselves and others enables men to break the chokehold of patriarchal masculinity. In the chapter titled, How Can We Have Better Relationships with the Women in Our Lives?, Stoltenberg writes, loving justice between a man and woman does not stand a chance when other men's manhood matters more. When a man has decided to love manhood more than justice, there are predictable consequences in all of his relationships with women. Learning to live as a man of conscience means deciding that your loyalty to the people whom you love is always more important than whatever lingering loyalty you may sometimes feel to other men's judgment on your manhood. When men and women are loyal to ourselves and others, when we love justice, when we understand fully the myriad of ways in which lying diminishes and erodes the possibility of meaningful, caring connection, that it stands in the way of love. Since the values and behavior of men are usually the standards by which everyone in our culture determines what is acceptable, it is important to understand that condoning lying is an essential component of patriarchal thinking for everyone. Men are by no means the only group who use lies as a way of gaining power over others. Indeed, if patriarchal masculinity estranges men from their selfhood, it is equally true that women who embrace patriarchal femininity, the insistence that females should act as though they are weak, incapable of rational thought, dumb, silly, are also socialized to wear a mask and to lie. This is one of the primary themes in Lerner's The Dance of Deception. With shrewd insight, she calls women to account for our participation in structures of pretense and lies, particularly within family life. Women are often comfortable lying to men in order to manipulate them to give us the things we feel we want to deserve. We may lie to bolster our male self-esteem. These lies may take the form of pretending to feel emotions we do not feel, to pretending levels of emotional vulnerability and neediness that are false. Let's make, okay. We're not going to go on that tangent. It's making me think about some of the interactions I had with my ex. Heterosexual women are often schooled by other women in the art of lying to men as a way to manipulate. Many examples of the support females receive for lying concern the desire to mate and bear children. When I longed to have a baby and my male partner at the time was not ready, I was stunned by the number of women who encouraged me to disregard his feelings, to go ahead without telling him. They felt it was fine to deny a child the right to be desired by both female and male biological parents. No deception is involved when a woman has a child with a sperm donor. As in such the case, there is no visible male parent to reject or punish an unwanted child. It disturbed me that women I respected did not take the need for male parenting seriously or believe that it was important for a man to want to parent as a woman. Whether we like it or not, we still live in a world where children want to know who their fathers are and, when they can, go in search of absent fathers. I cannot imagine bringing a child into this world whose father might reject him or her because he did not desire a child in the first place. Growing up in the 50s, in the days before adequate birth control, every female was acutely conscious of the way unwanted pregnancies could alter the course of a young woman's life. Still, it was clear that there were girls who hoped for pregnancy to emotionally bind individual males to them forever. I thought those days were long gone. Yet, even in this area of social equality between the sexes, I hear stories of females choosing to get pregnant when a relationship is rocky as a way of forcing the male to remain in their life or in the hope of forcing marriage. More than we might think, some men feel extremely bound to a woman when she gives birth to a child they have fathered. The fact that men succumb to being lied to and manipulated when the issue is biological parenting does not make it right or just. Men who accept being lied to and manipulated are not only abdicating their power, they are setting up a situation where they can blame women or justify woman hating. That happens in my comments a whole bunch. Man. And like, y'all, I don't know if I explained this. Bell Hooks passed away a little, I want to say 2012. I might be wrong with that. So this was like, it feels like Bell Hooks is reading my comment section. I'm going to have to get another highlighter. This is another case where lying is used to gain power over someone, to hold them against their will. Harriet Lerner reminds readers that honesty is only one aspect of truth-telling that is equated with moral excellence, an absence of deception or fraud. The mask of patriarchal femininity often renders the women's deceptions acceptable. However, when women lie, we lend credence to age-old sexist stereotypes that suggest that women are inherently, by virtue of being female, less capable of truth-telling. The origins of this sexist stereotype extend back to ancient stories of Adam and Eve, of Eve's willingness to lie, even to God. Often, when How often are women seen as conniving or more deceptive, right? Often when information is withheld by women and men, protection of privacy is the justification. In our culture, privacy is often confused with secrecy. Open, honest, truth-telling individuals value privacy. We all need spaces where we can be alone with our thoughts and feelings, where we can experience healthy psychological autonomy, and can choose to share when we want to. Keeping secrets is usually about power. About hiding and concealing information. Hence, many recovery programs stress that you are only as sick as your secrets. I like that. That's good. You are only as sick as your secrets. When a former boyfriend's sister shared with me a carefully guarded family secret regarding incest, which he did not know about, I responded by requesting that she tell him. If she didn't, I would. I felt that keeping this information a secret from him would violate the commitment we had made as a couple to be open and honest with each other. By withholding this information from him, joining his mother and sisters, I would have been participating in family dysfunction. How many of you partner up with somebody, right? And because you're partnered to that person without consenting, right, you're now trapped in the dysfunction of that family. And I know it can happen both ways, for sure. But that line right there, I was just like, oh, ex-in-laws. And I'm sure my ex probably feels the same about my family. That's fine. Sharing with him affirm my loyalty and respect for his capacity to cope with reality. Ooh, that's the other thing, right? Well, don't tell him. He can't handle it, right? But then Bella's like, no, I respect his capacity to cope with reality. Like, by keeping that secret, it shows that they don't trust him to handle himself. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a way of looking down at him. I didn't tell you because I thought you were too whatever, fill in the blank, to handle the truth. While privacy strengthens all of our bonds, secrecy weakens and damages connection. Lerner points out that we do not usually know the emotional cost of keeping secret until the truth is disclosed. Usually, secrecy involves lying, and lying is always the setting for potential betrayal and a violation of trust. Oh my gosh, this whole chapter. Widespread cultural acceptance of lying is a primary reason many of us will never know love. It is impossible to nurture one's own or another's spiritual growth when the core of one's being and identity is shrouded in secrecy and lies. Trusting that another person always intends your good, having a core foundation of loving practice, cannot exist with a context of deception. It is this truism that makes all acts of judicious withholding major moral dilemmas. More than ever before, we, as a society, need to renew a commitment to truth-telling. Such a commitment is difficult when lying is deemed more acceptable than telling the truth. Lying has become so much the accepted norm that people lie even when it would be simpler to tell the truth. True. Practical everyday mental health care practitioner, from the most uterine psychoanalysts to untrained self-help gurus, tell us that it is infinitely more fulfilling and we are all saner if we tell the truth, yet most of us are not rushing to stand up and be counted among the truth tellers. Indeed, as someone committed to being honest in daily life, I experience the constant drag of being seen as a freak for telling the truth, even when I speak truthfully about simple matters. The good news about Belle is that she lived long enough to where there's like interviews of her. You can find them here on YouTube, and you can tell that. Like, you can tell that that's how she lives her life. Like, the things that she says in her book about herself, like, she exudes them. So I encourage you, go watch some Bell Hooks interviews. Like, she's just a lovely human. If a friend gives me a gift and asks me to tell him or her whether or not I like it, I will respond honestly and judiciously. That is to say, I will speak the truth in a positive and caring manner. Yet even in this situation, the person who asks for honesty will often express annoyance when given a truthful response. In today's world, we are taught to fear the truth, to believe it always hurts. We are encouraged to see honest people as naive, as potential losers, bombarded with cultural propaganda, ready to instill in all of us the notion that lies are more important, that truth does not matter. We are all potential victims. Consumer culture, in particular, encourages lies. Advertising is one of the cultural mediums that has sanctioned lying. Keeping people in a constant state of lack and perpetual desire strengthens the marketplace economy. Lovelessness is a boon to consumerism, and lies strengthen the world of predatory advertising. Our passive acceptance of lies in public life, particularly via the mass media, upholds and perpetuates lying in our private lives. In our public life, there would be nothing for tabloid journalism to expose if we lived our lives out in the open, committed to truth-telling. Commitment to knowing love can protect us by keeping us wedded to a life of truth, willing to share ourselves openly and fully in both private and public life. To know love, we have to tell the truth to ourselves and to others. Creating a false self to mask fears and insecurities has become so common that many of us forget who we are and what we feel underneath the pretense. Breaking through this denial is always the first step in uncovering our longing to be honest and clear. Lies and secrets and it burdens us and causes stress. When an individual has always lied, he has no awareness that truth-telling can take away this heavy burden. To know this, he must let the lies go. When feminism first began, women talked openly about our desires to know men better, to love them for who they really are. We talked about our desires to be loved for who we really are, i.e., to be accepted in our physical and spiritual beings, rather than feeling we had to make ourselves into a fantasy self to become the object of male desire. And we urged men to be true to themselves, to express themselves. Then, when men began to share their thoughts and feelings, some women could not cope. They wanted the old lies and pretenses to be back in place. In the 70s, a popular Sylvia greeting card showed a woman seated in front of a fortune teller gazing into a crystal ball. The caption on the front of the card read, "He never talks about his feelings." On the inside, response was, "Next year at 2 p.m., men will start talking about their feelings. And at 2:05, women all over America will be sorry." This book is very much a companion to The Will to Change. There's a lot of crossover is the easiest way to say it. When we hear another person's thoughts, beliefs, and feelings, it is more difficult to project on them our perception of who they are. It is harder to be manipulative. That makes so much sense. At times, women find it difficult to hear what men have to say when what they tell us does not conform to our fantasies of who they are or who we want them to be. That goes both ways, in my humble opinion. But that's a super good observation. The wounded child inside many males is a boy whom, when he first spoke his truth, was silenced by paternal sadism, by patriarchal world that did not want him to claim his true feelings. The wounded child inside many females is a girl who was taught from early childhood on that she must become something other than herself, deny her true feelings in order to attract and please others. When men and women punish each other for truth-telling, we reinforce the notion that lies are better. To be loving, we willingly hear each other's truth, and, most important, we affirm the value of truth-telling. Lies may make people feel better, but they do not help them know love. Y'all, that was intense. I'm glad I'm drinking the decaf coffee tonight. If you guys like that book, I'll be back to read more. I'll add it to a playlist below. I encourage you to read the whole thing. If you had any thoughts or takeaways, please let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll make some videos addressing those. If you want to catch me on other socials, I've already talked about that earlier. You can find me TikTok, Instagram. If you want to hang out with me personally, digitally, you can join my Patreon. You get access to a Discord, and you can meet the people over there. We've got some cool folks over there. Until then, everyone, grace and peace.